Hey, so today we're going to talk about 5 planning factors you need to incorporate in your preparation scheme, right? And being a retired military guy, planning sucks, but planning is essential. And what I hope to talk about here and hope to impress upon you is that you need to strategize and then operationalize a plan, and considering factors, assumptions, knowns, unknowns, facts. So here's 5 things, right? First, you need to evaluate your circles, your circle of trust, your circle of influence, your circle of care, your circle of concern. As you get closer down to that tiniest circle of the folks that you're responsible for taking care of, understand how the other circles affect them. But you need to figure out who's in what circle. And I suspect, well, obviously everyone is different, but I suspect it's not always blood relationships that you always assumed. Blood relationships have other relationships. Water sometimes dilutes the blood. There's all sorts of complex things, but understand who is who, and make your own decisions based upon where people stand, but at least understand where they stand and understand how they think and who can be trusted, who can't be trusted, who's a knucklehead and who's not, right? Do a risk assessment of your income and all of your household income, and then expand that out to do a risk assessment of the income of the folks in your circle of concern. I mean, obviously, if you're, we might have learned a lot of things from COVID and about the supply chain, about demand, about cash flow, and how long things can and can't last. I think that is very helpful for us now, in you understanding where you are in your situation. But just contemplate for a moment disruptions in the supply chain and in the transportation network. Take a look at what pays you money every month, and what in the world could affect that, right? And affect those around you. Just assess that, understand it, be aware of it as a planning factor, right? There's not much you can do to control that specifically. Maybe in some cases you know that yourself, but all of us should understand what could stop our income, right? So understand that. So after you analyze your income, you need to take a real hard assessment of what your expenses are right now, and what your commitments are financially, and start prioritizing what you will and won't pay. Sounds pretty bold and all, for in our society where we work so hard to build our credit. In a short to midterm situation where finances are tight and you have to eat, you have to have a place to live. And everything else starts to move into a distant third, competing for third on down in that order. So old commitments may not be. You don't have to meet them. So understand that. You have to live, and you have to have a place to live. Go back to your risk assessment for your income. If you're depending upon money from someone that's if you're a 30, 60, 90-day small business, if someone's repaying you a loan, if you have some sort of divorce settlement, all those things, when it comes right down to it, a person will decide not to pay you in a hard time. So don't include that in your income. It's perfectly moral for them to say, no, not, pay you later. All right, so you prioritize your expenses. You understand what it takes just to maintain a house and some food. Transportation for you. One of the planning factors you need to look at your general geographic location and realize that everywhere in the United States, every location has some sort of unique organic threat, whether it's wildfires out west, flooding, hurricanes, massive snowstorms and ice storms, nearby man-made stuff, nearby nuclear reactors. So we all live in a place that has some sort of organic threat that just pre-exists, right? It's just there. And if you, before 2020, folks would have said, a mosaic of crisis is ridiculous, and things stacked one on top of the other. We've seen a lot of man-made stuff stacked one on top of the other, but then we've seen very strange natural phenomenon stacking on top of man-made stuff. So don't think for a moment that in the middle of a insurgency situation in the fall and the winter that we could not also have natural events. 2020 has just said, it's throwing everything at us. So imagine for a moment that in the middle of an insurgency where there's all sorts of other shortages of commonly accepted services, power, intermittent, phone service, intermittent, sometimes spotty, sometimes not available. Imagine all the stuff that you now rely on, if you were going to leave your location and move someplace else. You rely on your telephone and the navigation system of that. It's not like when I was a young man and a child and we would go on a road trip and I had a Rand McNally map and I would look at it in great detail, and most of us don't even own Rand McNally paper maps anymore. So I'll put a couple of links in the bottom, but own a map and understand how to get from where you are to someplace else, and also understand how to get from where you are to where some of those people in your circle of concern are, if you had to go get them or help them. But think beyond the telephone that you're carrying in your pocket that could be intermittently available. So having and that's just part of your ISR, your intelligence preparation of the battlefield, right? Understanding, having all the assets available before the operation starts. Maps, you got to get your maps. And lastly, the fifth thing that and it's closely related to number 4, but communications. And I say it all the time now. I've become a big fan of ham and HF radios. You don't have to be the guy with the 1980s Suburban and the really strange dipole antennas hanging off the back of it, and a power supply that could run the USS Enterprise starship. You don't have to have all that. A $29 Bofang will suffice for many purposes, but start to think through, one, the tools that you will use to communicate with those folks that you identify in item number 1 is your circle of concern, and how you will communicate with them and when. I mean, just imagine you've got to go pick up your daughter from Atlanta, and things just got really strange in the world, or they got strange in Atlanta, and maybe cell phone service is dicey in Atlanta. How do you link up with her if she's no longer at her condominium, apartment, house, wherever she was? Think these things through, maybe she has one of those little $29 Bofangs and she understands to turn the thing on, right? And when you get in range, you talk to her and y'all link up. Anyway, planning factors, and we'll incorporate this, and to use a term I hate, we'll circle back to these 5 factors many times, but there you go. Hey, have a beautiful day.